Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today, the remarkable life of the colourful female aviator Pancho Barnes. It could be argued that flying was in Pancho Barnes' blood. Born into a wealthy family in 1901, Florence Leontine Lowe, as she was originally known, grew up in a large mansion in California. Her family's wealth was built on aviation. Pancho's grandfather was Thaddeus S.C. Lowe, the man responsible for establishing the United States' first military air unit during the Civil War. The Union Army Baloon Corps might have been made up of hot air balloons rather than airplanes, but it was fairly revolutionary in its time. It was also Grandpa Lowe who would take Pancho to her first air show when she was just 10 years old, cementing her love of flight at a young age. Despite being born into wealth, Pancho resisted the expectations of rich society from a young age. Her father was an avid outdoorsman who allowed Pancho to join him in his sport, while Mother was busy caring for a sick uncle. She was treated like a son rather than a daughter, and she kinda liked it that way. She was given a thoroughbred horse for her 5th birthday and won her first equestrian trophy later that same year. Not only was she a tomboy at home, but after a brief stint of homeschooling, she was sent to Pasadena Elementary School, where she was the only girl in a classroom with 23 boys. Not much is known about the education she got in the usual subjects, but she did learn to run fast, spit, curse, and fight just as well as her male peers. When they learnt of her behavior, though, her parents eventually moved her to a Catholic boarding school. In response, Barnes ran away to Tijuana on horseback for a short amount of time. When she eventually graduated from an Episcopalian boarding school, Pancho announced to her parents that she wanted to be a veterinarian. At the time, this was an unheard of profession for a woman and a particularly appalling idea to her well-to-do mother, who encouraged her daughter to pursue a more ladylike profession. Though she resisted becoming a lady, a marriage between Pancho and an Episcopalian reverend was arranged. Pancho looked at this as a shot at independence rather than being tied down, for at least she could break free from her demanding mother. Thus, Pancho married Reverend C. Rankin Barnes in 1921, and they had a child together 9 months later. Needless to say, Pancho was bored stiff being a preacher's wife. She took a shot at teaching Sunday school, but it didn't quite live up to her childhood adventures on horseback. Luckily, she had some success in Hollywood, where she was hired to ride horses in movies. She was indeed such a good rider that she could even carry a camera on her shoulder while on horseback, making around $100 every day just doing that, which is about $1,000 today. The money went straight into hiring a cook, a nanny, and a housekeeper. The servants effectively took over Pancho's duties as a housewife and a mother. When Pancho's mother died when she was just 22 years old, her father remarried a woman a few years older than Pancho was. In a fit of anger, Pancho started a series of affairs with men who weren't boring, upstanding Episcopalian preachers as some sort of revenge. Her family, though, they soon caught wind of her shenanigans. Pressured to leave due to the family's embarrassment, she signed up to crew a banana boat headed for South America with some of her friends. Dressing as a man and taking on the name Jacob Crane, Pancho set sail for Mexico. She and the crew soon discovered that they were running weapons and ammunitions to revolutionaries down south. When they landed, not everything exactly went as planned. The ship was boarded by Mexican guards who held the crew hostage for 6 weeks. Only Pancho and one other crew member managed to escape from their captors. The 2 escapees, they stole a horse and started their journey back to the United States. It was during this stint that Pancho earned her nickname. She said that her partner looked a bit like Don Quixote, and he said that that made her Pancho, mistaking the name of the character Sancho. Despite the mistake, Pancho decided she quite liked the sound of Pancho Barnes, and the name stuck with her until her death. After returning to California, Pancho sought her next great adventure. In 1928, she began taking flying lessons and took her first solo flight after just 6 hours of instruction. She went on to become one of the first female pilots to earn her license in the United States, and in 1930, she beat Amelia Earhart's speed record. Buying herself a $5,500 plane, she decided to turn her hobby into an enterprise, earning money from being a test pilot and doing promotional flights. Later, she also became a stunt pilot, returning to Hollywood to feature in movies again, this time in a metal bird rather than on a horse. Unfortunately, though, Pancho lived a lavish lifestyle. She wasn't used to saving money and tended to spend it on parties for her friends and additional real estate that she wouldn't use. By 1935, she ran out of funds and moved to a small house on an alfalfa farm in the middle of nowhere, where she stayed with her horses and her airplane. Her son, Billy, helped her out on the farm every now and again. He had been living with his dad while his mother went adventuring, but enjoyed the freedom of the farm. Pancho was also visited by flyboys and her Hollywood friends, which unfortunately didn't do her pocketbook much good. During this time, she continued to host a string of lovers as well. In 1939, her first husband asked for a divorce that had been a long time coming. She then married Robert Hudson Nichols Jr. shortly after the divorce, but the union lasted just 2 weeks. In 1944, she was visited by a show dancer named John Shalita, who she married and lived with for a whole 4 months. She remarried in 1952 for a 4th time to Mac McKendry. The reception was a lavish affair with a 50-pound wedding cake, 16 gallons of Jell-O, and lassie as entertainment. When Pancho received an inheritance upon her uncle's death, she started enhancing her property. She put in runways and encouraged pilots to fly in and tie up their planes for free as long as they purchased oil and gas from her. She also converted the guest house, adding more private bathrooms. Her property even boasted a repair shop and a flight school. She called it a modern flying dude ranch and advertised for families to join her for just $49 per week. But Pancho wasn't one to miss out on the old days. She also created a private club called the Happy Bottom Riding Club, exclusively for her pilot and Hollywood buddies, where they could drink and tell stories. Illegal liquor was flown in from Mexico, and hostesses waited the tables and danced with the guests. The pilots' wives seem to think that these women did more than hostess, but Pancho has denied the claims. Pancho was at the absolute height of happiness then, but it wouldn't last because in 1952 the government started buying up land around the Edwards Air Force Base to build a long runway. This meant Pancho's beloved Happy Bottom Riding Club was on the chopping block. After a series of lawsuits, the government finally won the title to Pancho's property, and she was given $185,000, which is $1.5 million today, as recompense. She tried to start over, but Happy Bottom had taken her 20 long years to build. Pancho also still had trouble managing her money, which wasn't good for business. She was also diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent a double mastectomy. And if all of that wasn't enough, her relationship with her 4th husband crumbled soon after, and while it was the longest relationship she had maintained, lasting almost 10 years, she filed for divorce in 1962. She did end up leaving Mac McKendry her worldly possessions in her will, though, so she must have liked him better than her previous husbands. Pancho, though, she wasn't able to get back on her feet. She died in 1975 in less than glamorous surrounds. It's thought that her breast cancer was the ultimate cause of death. Her ashes were ultimately scattered over her old ranch. Despite falling from grace towards the end of her life, Pancho was always upbeat. As she liked to say, when you have a choice, choose happy. As to perhaps being somewhat overlooked as a pioneering female aviator over the much more widely publicized Amelia Earhart and Harriet Quimby among others, and this was largely due to her unladylike exploits and penchant for off-color quotes like, "Flying makes me feel like a sex machine in a whorehouse with a stack of $20 bills," well, her response to such observations was, "Hell, I had more fun in a week than those weenies had in a lifetime." So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and do not forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one. And as always, thanks for watching.